Hello everyone and welcome back to part 2 of our map series. This time we'll be covering Reserve, which is going to be, as far as I'm concerned, kind of the second highest trafficked area, especially in the early game behind Customs, as Customs is where many of the quests take place, and Reserve is where much of the high value loot can be found for economy purposes and quest purposes. With the Customs expansion coming out here pretty soon, we'll definitely touch back on that one and kind of quote unquote remaster the first video in this series, and hopefully we'll have the rest of the maps out before that time comes. But as you can see, I've already started out this map with the spawns written out, as well as a generalized path. And this time we're going to focus more on where to go when you spawn, why to go there, and what to look out for, kind of in the opening 60 seconds of the game, I would say. Customs has a unique advantage or disadvantage, depending on how you look at it, where because everybody spawns on the east and west side of the map, and it's so narrow, it's really just a matter of there's loot all along these vertical lines across the map, and you're going to run across people at some point going one of two directions. Whereas Reserve, woods, shoreline, interchange, even if you only limit the normal extracts, it still has way more range of where people could be at any given point in the raid. So rather than focus on the specific flow of a given raid, we'll talk about how to start off a raid strong, and then how you would go about rotating around the map and what to look for from each particular spot, rather than breaking it down spawn by spawn. The only spawn by spawn breakdown is going to be, of course, which engagements to look out for in those first 60 seconds and where to go to prioritize high value loot. So with the intro out of the way, we'll jump straight into it, starting with spawn point number 1, arguably the best spawn point on the map for a variety of reasons. Spawn point number 1 here has the quickest access to get straight into... Oop, it is not on black. There we go. Spawn point 1 has the quickest access to get into Marked Room on the bottom floor of Black Pawn. And if you want to play it a little bit risky, something that I like to do, or if you don't have the key for Marked Room, something that I like to do is immediately run on top of this bunker and keep an eye out for spawn 3, but more specifically spawn point 2. Almost every single time I've tried this play, spawn point 2 runs right into my open arms and I get to collect all their gear, whether they're hatchlings or chads, because there's a little bush you hide in up here, and so long as you don't miss too many shots on too many players, they're all dead before they can even figure out what's happening. So once you've done one of these two options, you basically just connect into the routing of the regular map based on what keys you have access to, what loot you're trying to prioritize, and of course what your best extracts are. Cliff is going to be difficult, but we'll have two basic assumptions: non-cliff extract, which takes place all around here, and the cliff extract. Of course there's the manhole, but for the sake of the video here, we're just going to assume normal loadouts that won't involve the manhole or the friendly scav duo extract. So from here, spawn point 1, you go into Black Pawn, check the Marked Room, check the locked doors with the armories. There's several weapons cases, filing cabinets, grenade cases, food, ammo, all sorts of stuff in both the White and Black Pawn buildings. Black Bishop, also known as School, of course, gives a lot of the high-tech military items or electronics in the tech room, located on the second floor, accessed by the key or the third floor drop-down. There's also a lot of other loose loot like military circuit boards, gyrotachometers, and so forth, located throughout the school here. From here, you could either go straight to Queen or move to White Bishop, especially if you have the keys. There's a lot of valuable meds that spawn in here on the second floor. White Queen, of course, is the creme de la creme as far as it comes to electronics. You've got all sorts of military tech that spawns in here, and it's where most people are going to be prioritizing if they're on the run for loot. At this point, you have the decision to either break off and make a move for your extract, whether it be taking the lever and moving to the hermetic door, taking the manhole, getting up to cliff extract, or continuing on with your route and then, choosing from there. If you choose to continue on with your route, I like to go straight over to Black Knight, more locked rooms, more of everything that happens to be all over Reserve. We're going to eventually stop repeating ourselves here, because all of these buildings have valuable loot in one form or another. But from Black Knight, this part's risky. You could go through the train station here. Plenty of loot, plenty of combat most of the time, but also very dangerous. One way or the other, though, you'd want to cross over, end up over by these bunkers to check out these rooms, whether they have dead players, whether they've got a marked room that hasn't been opened yet due to the key not being acquired by anyone on that side. Maybe there's a weapons case and the guy didn't have a backpack big enough to hold it. And if you're lucky, he then died somewhere else on the map. Who knows? Check out, if you're doing a full loop of the map, you always got to check out both of these, especially this top one here, as you have the marked room as well as an armory. Coming back through, we have the train, White Rook, I guess it would be called, but train station realistically. It's got paracord spawns, plenty of tools, grenades, the occasional weapon drop. And of course, it puts you in a good position if you choose to take the train off the map. From the train station, we loop back over to White Knight if it wasn't hit on your way from Black Knight over here. White Knight, plenty of locked rooms, lots of good gear. All the way through this long garage, we have the locked room in the back here, plenty of stuff along the way. And then this last little bit is mostly just your escape route, whether you're taking your way out through Manhole or all the way up to the Cliff Extract. Potentially, if you're really ballsy, you could then just make a break for the Hermetic Door and go all the way back, but you know, to each their own. All right, so we started off with one. We kind of looped through the whole map and gave a general idea of what the routing would look like and why you would want to go to each of these places based on what keys you have and where you start. With that said, we'll continue on to the remaining spawn points, and that should wrap up the video after we cover the opening moments of each spawn. Which brings us to spawn number 2. Now, as you can expect, spawn number 2's first priority should always be clearing out spawn number 1, just in case they're camping and chilling for them. Most of the time, in my experience, I always get the kill from here, but I rarely see people over here, as they tend to run straight to school or straight to black. Once you've cleared out the left side over here, or I guess I think this is south technically, but we're just gonna call it the north side of the map. Once you've cleared out spawn 1, take an eye out and look for spawn number 3, as they will likely be making their way over to school as well. Even potentially spawn number 4, which we'll touch on here shortly, could route up through here, try to make their way up to here into school, and could be an easy pick depending on what you're loaded with and how close you've gotten. Spawn number 3, once again, is fairly redundant. Keep an eye out for spawn number 2 and spawn number 4, or make a blitz straight to Black Bishop. Get your hands on those graphics cards, Tetrises, and so forth that spawn in the tech room before anybody else shows up. Spawn number 4, this is where we kind of hit our first breakpoint, I would argue. Spawn number 4 has a very good chance of, I'm going to draw these extra routes here just to be safe. That's our way in for 2. 3. I think we should overlap these a little bit. 4. So 4 is our first actual breakpoint, because you could choose to immediately go over towards marked room, where if there's items big enough to not go into a container, you have a good chance of engaging in PvP and taking those items, or simply getting to the marked room yourself if nobody has a key yet. Alternatively, you could very quickly engage on group number 3. I'm gonna go with this for now. Very easily engage on group number 3 before doing the same thing yourself, running into Black Bishop and trying to get your hands on all that valuable tech loot. At which point, there's even a good chance that spawn number 2, if they spent too long looking for spawn 3 or spawn number 1, still hasn't really left this position, and you'd have a good angle on them from the top of this bunker. Although you are exposed as well, which we'll get to shortly here. But I hope this kind of makes a little bit of sense. You can see where our conflict is and where we're going to be joining the map in most of these cases. So spawn number 5, this one's pretty straightforward for me. I almost always, 100% of the time, just sprint towards marked room here. Engage in that PvP. If you get it before he even unlocks the door, you could use the key yourself or just take the stuff from him. You could choose to go back this way towards spawn number 4. However, at that point, the PvP risk has minimal upsides to it outside of the actual loot from the kill if you get it. Everything else is going to be stripped, marked room, school, by the time you finish looting these bodies and get out of there. Plus, if raid boss is in here, good chance he interrupts your fight, even if it's after one of you gets a kill. Spawn number 6 is probably self-explanatory. If you have the marked room key and you spawn at room number 6, it's a disservice to yourself and your inventory if you don't immediately run in there open that thing up and figure out what's my next play. Do I need to leave immediately, or do I have a sick case that I'm fine with leaving in my gamma regardless of whether or not I die? From there, it's a simple matter of deciding where you want to join the route. I tend to go north into train station, try to get those paracords, and then continue on from there, because once more, you have a long ways to traverse out in quite an exposed area before you end up in the high loot zones. Spawn number 7 has a mildly unique situation where they could, like Team 5, choose to immediately engage down here on Marked Room. They could choose to take up a position in train station and try and engage down on Marked Room. Or they could screw that entirely, move out into the field here to take on Team 8, or dip to, say, the underground bunkers here, get all the loot in the bunker floors, these guys right here, and then continue on their way with the usual routing. Team number 8. This one's kind of my least favorite spawn on the map for most general purposes. You're far enough away from everything that no one's generally going to be pushing your position, so you can take advantage of that and engage on PvP. However, at the same time, you're coming from an area where you basically have to get out of for the most part just to feel safe, which can be a little nerve-wracking as you're pushing into areas that you know are going to have players. So Team 8, when I spawn here, most of the time, especially because of late game, Team 8, when I spawn here, I tend to just run straight towards spawn 7, see if I can engage on them, and then from there, continue on down to Marked Room, because otherwise you're going over towards Tank Room, which has potential loot, but at the same time, as we'll get into in just a moment, Team 9 could easily pick you off or be in position to catch you before you've arrived. White Knight is a little bit of a safer route, but again, it's very exposed. If there's boss scav, he has a great advantage on you, and there's not a lot of options there. I would most likely recommend always trying to head towards train station and go from there. Almost wrapped up here. Spawn number 9 is going to be one of the actual more high value spots to start because of its proximity to a lot of high level loot. Loose high level loot. Now, if you're a super Chad, or it's just late enough in the wipe that you're not concerned about the loot, could immediately bum rush your way up here to the top of the hill. Secure yourself a sniper position and engage on Team 10 here, who's likely still dinking around looting these safes if they haven't immediately sprinted towards you or towards Marked Room here. Otherwise, the normal route I would say is, depending on what you're looking for, you can either choose to immediately hit Long Garage, White Knight, and join here, the normal routing. You could go straight to Black Knight and go alternatively the other directions here. Or the most common, I would assume, or the most common that I think, is to go straight over to Queen, where you'll likely be the first person inside to start nabbing all of that sweet military tech. Last but not least, we have Team 10. Team 10 should be pretty straightforward here. At the top of the hill, you've got a couple different safes, 2 of them behind locked doors, 1 of them out in the open. There's an intelligence spawn, so there's a lot of good stuff to grab up here if you spawn here. But as stated, you could get engaged on quite quickly by Team number 9, catching you unaware if you're not ready for their rush up the hill, and you're giving up access to far more loot that other people are going to be prioritizing. For example, if you wanted to, since this is for visual purposes, not the actual spawn, most of the time you're going to be over here or over here or something, and you can immediately move yourself down to Marked Room or straight into Queen here, which again, because you spawn all around this particular area, you might spawn much closer to Queen than you did to Black Pawn. Alright, I think that's gonna about wrap it up. I hope this was helpful. I know it's a little messy here, but the color coding hopefully clears some of that up. It's all about those opening 60 seconds, and then after that, it's just gonna be repetitive play of the game and get used to the maps and get a feel for where people are, what angles they hold. But otherwise, with any luck, you guys will be able to take advantage of these opening moments of each round on one of the craziest maps and best maps in Tarkov. Thank you guys for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and if this helped you, I appreciate it.